Hello and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Concrete Conversations. I'm Alan Sparkman, Executive Director for the Tennessee Concrete Association, and I'm joined today by TCA's most recent full-time employee, Joseph McDaniel. We're going to chat with Joseph here in a few minutes about his experience and what brought him to TCA. Wanted to start with a mid-year update on the concrete industry, just a few quick facts and figures, and then a little bit of maybe an outlook in terms of supply for the second half of 2023. So far this year, we have information on the national level about concrete production through the first quarter, so the end of March. And in Tennessee, the news is pretty good. In Tennessee, in the first quarter, our statewide production was about 2.2 million cubic yards, which is actually up 12% versus last year, 2022. For that same time period last year, we were just below 2 million cubic yards. Now, the first quarter numbers are always variable because of weather, so you can't put a whole lot of stock in those. But a 12% increase is notable, especially since 2022 was yet another record year of concrete production in the state of Tennessee. If you go back to 2020, we had about 8.38 million cubic yards of production. That was a record, so that was the first time we got back above 8 million cubic yards since the Great Recession, so that would have been back in 2007 for us here in Tennessee. And that was a new record in 2020 by just a few yards. In 2021, we broke through the 9 million cubic yard barrier for the first time ever, so 9.1 million cubic yards in 2021, which put us well beyond our peak that we established back before the Great Recession. Now, nationally, we're still well below our peak production, which was about 460 million cubic yards back in 2006. But in Tennessee, we have surpassed where we were before the Great Recession. So we're growing a bit faster in Tennessee than the nation as a whole, and that's probably no surprise to any of our folks living here in Tennessee. In 2022, we set another record of 9.26 million cubic yards, so a small increase over 2021, but yet another record of annual production. So being up 12% in the first quarter of 2023, I think is noteworthy. As we look toward the rest of the year, so we're now about the midpoint, we're in June, close to the official start of summer here in a few days. We seem to be in a better position in terms of supply. We are not yet experiencing any type of cement allocations, and overall the cement supply situation does seem to be significantly better than it was at this time last year. The mills have a better supply, a little better inventory, the ability to import cement to make up shortages in domestic supply has improved considerably. So for the most part, the outlook is reasonably positive for the remainder of the year. There are a couple of issues potentially out there. Many of you will no doubt remember that last year as we got into the fall, we had an additional constraint on cement availability as well as some other products because of the low water levels in the Mississippi River, which was a problem that we hadn't experienced maybe ever. That fairly quickly resolved itself with the wintertime precipitation. But one potential cloud on the horizon is that now in June, the Mississippi River is, while there's not yet restrictions or major restrictions on barge traffic, the water level in the Mississippi is considerably lower than it usually is this time of year. So that's a little worrisome as we head into the summer and we expect perhaps less precipitation. There have been some reports of companies having to light load barges coming particularly up the Mississippi, so from the Gulf toward Memphis, for example, already starting to see some minor restrictions on barge traffic. And depending on the precipitation that we get in the upper Mississippi Valley, that could become a more serious limitation for freight of all types that moves on the Mississippi River as we get into the summer. But generally, we're in much better shape today than we were at this point last year when the restrictions were pretty serious. So that bodes well for us as we look toward the second half of 2023. The amount of work certainly is not as perhaps quite as positive as it was last year, but most people are still reporting significant backlogs of work. I talked to a local architect here in Nashville last week, and they're still at pretty much a record backlog for them with lots of work in the pipeline. So that's certainly bodes well for the rest of this year. Residential is losing some steam in most parts of the state. So it's a leveling off and maybe a slight reduction, but commercial and infrastructure is holding up quite well. So on balance, I think our outlook for the rest of 2023 is pretty positive, and our folks continue to be very, very busy. TCA is working on several initiatives on the workforce side to try to bring attention to the opportunities that exist in the concrete industry for jobs and careers. So we're excited about the Be Pro, Be Proud Tennessee project, which will kick off in Tennessee high schools this fall. TCA is a supporter of that. We're on the founding council, and we're working with other groups in the construction industry and business in general to get the message about careers in the trades like concrete to high school students prior to their graduation. So we'll continue to keep folks updated on that. And that's a good segue into our conversation this morning with TCA's newest employee, Joseph McDaniel. Joseph started with us right at the end of May, so just after Memorial Day, and still relatively new, but we're really pleased to have Joseph, and I'm going to ask him a couple of questions and give everybody a chance to get to know him a little bit better. Joseph was a TCA scholarship recipient at MTSU, and he came in as a junior and graduated this past May. He'd been doing a little bit of work for us during his time at MTSU, and we're just really pleased to have him on board as a full-time TCA employee. So Joseph, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about kind of your history and how you came to MTSU and about your experience there at MTSU.
Well, my name is Joseph McDaniel. Glad to be on the podcast today and get to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in a small town in Alabama, about an hour south of Huntsville. My background as far as the construction industry goes, my grandfather and my dad both had a construction business, and we did a lot of residential concrete work. We built some houses. And my dad also was a construction technology teacher at Gadsden State Community College. And so kind of those two together, I had quite the bit of experience even as a kid growing up in the industry. And so that was always something that I was interested in. And as I kind of started going through high school and as I was in my senior year, I started taking my dad's construction class at Gadsden State. And so while I was in his class, got a 2-year certificate there. And we kind of found out about MTSU and the concrete industry management program through that. And so as I was kind of looking for that next step, MTSU was clear. As I began to pray and look into that, MTSU was where I decided to go. So having a little bit of background in construction and concrete, my interest was in the concrete industry management program. And so after getting there, like Alan said, I had received a scholarship from TCA, and So through that is how I met Alan. We met up, and he ended up offering me just kind of a part-time position here. So I was able to help them out in a few things. And as I was going through school, I was also able to work with them. And so when I got toward the end of graduating, TCA was definitely on my mind as a place to work. So
Joseph, tell us a little bit about the experience at MTSU. You came in basically as a junior, so you had a couple years there on campus. But tell us a little bit about the program itself and kind of what your experience was at MTSU.
So like I said, I came in as a junior. That was back in the fall of 21. So we were actually still in the midget building, which for those of you that's kept up with what's happening over at MTSU, we actually got a new concrete and construction management building as of fall of 22. So we were still in the midget building. I came in as a junior. So loved my time still at the concrete program, even at the midget building. But it was very cool to see kind of the progression of the program, even in the short time that I was there. So when I came in, we were still getting to be over there. But I really enjoyed the concrete program. I thought I knew a lot about concrete until I came to MTSU, and I realized I didn't know near as much as I thought. But what I enjoyed about being in the concrete program was just the further knowledge that I got, even about the science behind it. And even from a residential standpoint, where a lot of times testing and the science behind concrete isn't really thought about much, but I've been able to even help out some, like in my family business and with others that are even in the residential side, understand some of the problems that you run into that otherwise may not be that information may not be readily available to them. So that's been cool, just to be able to help them out in that. But I also enjoyed the hands-on component of the concrete program at MTSU. We got to do some, I know one specific pour we got to do on campus, and that was for one of my classes with Mr. Huddleston. We were able to pour a little slab on campus for one of the certifications. That's not field testing. Flatwork certification. Yeah. So that was really cool. And also the lab time we got to spend, it was cool to get your hands on some of the lab tests. And then as we moved into the new concrete building, let me just tell you, that's a really nice place. Many different kinds of labs. There's soil labs, concrete testing labs, and then for the construction students, there's some general construction labs. But for senior lab class, we got to do some ultra high performance concrete testing. So that was really cool. We got to make some samples. I think the highest sample we had broke it a little over 22,000 pounds. So that was really cool just to see that side. So it's a really hands-on program as well. But I've really enjoyed my time at MTSU, learned a lot, and I think the biggest thing that you gain from going to MTSU and in the concrete program is just the networking that they offer. There's several trips that they take out to World of Concrete, NRMCA, and they also invite companies to come in all through the year, and you get to meet. If you want a job, you can get a job, and so the networking and the people you get to meet, it's just special. So there's not many programs like it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the new building, which was the culmination of a dream that literally goes back, I think, to when the program started in 1998, and lots of people played significant roles in having that new building. But it's pretty cool to have that, pardon the pun, concrete representation of the dream achieved and in action. And I've heard nothing but great things from everybody that's had a chance to utilize the new facility. So a couple things as we wind up. We are scheduling, and you can find these on our website at tnconcrete.org. But we have we call them local eats and drinks events scheduled across the state. So we've got one here at our fairly new office location in Nashville. Some of you have been here, some of you have not, but if you'd like to come by, we're going to have our local eats and drinks on the afternoon of July 6th here in Nashville at the TCA office, again address and details you can find on our website. We're going to have a extended local eats and drinks event from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Thursday, July 6th. So we'd love to see you here, and you'll have a chance to meet Joseph in person as well as the rest of the TCA staff. We do have events scheduled for Chattanooga the following week. I believe that's July 12th. We'll be at the Chattanoogan at the High Rise Bar there at the Chattanoogan property in downtown Chattanooga. And then later in the month, we'll be over in Knoxville on July 27th. So we'll look forward to seeing you at your local events. We have some West Tennessee events scheduled in August. So we're going to have, we'll go from end to end, and you'll have a chance to meet Joseph in person. Our summer meeting is coming up, so hopefully we'll see many of you in person in Destin at the beach. Should be a great meeting. It's our tri-state meeting. Good crowd, great sponsorship. We appreciate all those companies who have sponsored, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody down there. So we will come back to you here in a couple of weeks with another episode of Tennessee Concrete Conversations, and thanks for listening.